So welcome everyone, welcome to this Heritage Apple event. We're delighted to have Catherine Drummond-Herdman with us from Megginch Castle in her beautiful orchard, and it's not raining, which is always a bonus as well when we're doing an event outside. Thank you very much for joining us. This is part of Forth Environment Link's Gather Round Local Food program of events. We've been running these events since last Monday, and we'll have another event this coming Monday you can join us for as well, about growing your own. All of these, or the majority of these events, will be available to catch up on as well on Forth Environment Link's YouTube channel. And I should just say thank you to our funders, Leader, and to Transport Scotland for funding our project and enabling us over the last couple of years to meet so many amazing people that we're celebrating with this week's worth of events. So we're moving into autumn. We're moving to cooler weather, greyer skies, but that is good news for apple fans. I think we're celebrating our National Apple Day on the 21st of October in just 3 weeks' time. Yeah, so one thing I just wanted to kick off with that I found a bit fascinating was a book I've been reading just recently called The Way We Eat Now by B. Wilson, which I thoroughly recommend. And there's a page in here that caught my eye, which is I'm going to hold it up. It's and hopefully you'll be able to see it, even if you won't be able to read it. Basically, that is a partial list of 100, partial list. The entire list is 150 varieties of British apple, just beginning with the letter C. Wow. Just gives you an idea of just how many varieties of apple we're talking about. And of these 150 varieties of apple that begin with the letter C that grow in Britain, only one of them is commonly available in any supermarket, and that's your Cox Orange Pippin. So there's so many apples and varieties that we're missing out on when we're in supermarket shopping, and I'm hoping that Catherine can introduce us to some of the magic that we're missing out on. But first off, Catherine, would you like to introduce yourself and introduce where you are and how long that orchard has been there?
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Catherine. This is the Megginch Castle orchard, and it's probably originates from the monks who came over about 1,000 years ago, and they brought the apples and apple making things they made delicious things with their apples, or the cider making. But having said that, in Scotland there's not a huge cider heritage as such, because we don't have any specific cider apples that were bred in Scotland. Megginch, I'll just go back. So Megginch is in the Carse of Gowrie, which is between Perth and Dundee, and it's a complete microclimate here. We've got the Tay on one side, and then we've got the braes of the Carse on the other. And the Tay is an estuary, so it keeps it just a little bit warmer here, and that means that we can grow a lot of fruit. And the apples we've had, the heritage apples, I'd say we've been growing apples really well. I suppose probably the decline of the apples probably started at the end of the 19th century, and before that there were thousands of apples. I think there were 40,000 in the Carse, and so we had there's a long heritage of apple growing. But by the 1960s, I would say probably all the orchards had gone, apart from a few pockets here and there. And what we'd also lost were all the traditional skills that linked in with orchards, with growing, with the grazing, and the whole sort of biodiversity linked with apples. And that's luckily now we've had a real upswell in apple growing. And the thing about apples is that you can grow any apple, usually, almost anywhere, but you just need the right variety. So you need the right apple for your spot. So at Megginch in the 60s, they were really busy grafting and breeding more varieties, and just trying to refine what worked here. And what they came up with, I'm going to stand up. We've got a line which was called it's called a bloody ploughman, and it's got the most beautiful ribbing, and it's an incredible sort of bright red. And there's a lovely story with it. I might be not quite true, but it was when there was somebody was shot poaching apples, and as he lay dying against the tree, his blood dripped into the roots of the apple tree, and the apples from then on were tinged with his blood. So it's a great story, but I don't know if it's actually true. So this apple should have a pink flesh inside it, but I'm not sure if it does, because as with all things horticultural, there's always a little bit of a issue in the provenance of the apples. So this one might be it might be a different graft, so it might have come from a different. There were two slightly different varieties of the bloody ploughman, and one was pink inside and the other wasn't. It's a little bit pink, but I just want to illustrate the different varieties. So we've got, having said that you don't have cider apples in Scotland, that's true, but we've got a lot planted. I've got 384 varieties and of cider apples, and of each variety I've got 2 trees, and this is it's a national collection. And my original idea with the cider apple was just to see if we could grow them, and if they grew well, then perhaps there were other farmers that wanted to grow them, and they could come here and have a look and see that they do grow, and have a look at the varieties. So there's a lovely variety which I like, which is called Pendragon, and it's bright red. I've taken a bite out of it earlier, and it's dark red inside, and I always think Pendragon, it sounds like dragon's blood. So I know there's an apple grower, or rather she's a juicer over in Fife, and she's growing more of those so she can make pink juice. Let's see, that's another one. I was just going to walk through and any questions whilst I wander around, because I love apples, so I'd get completely diverted. So I probably have forgotten some really key things. We've got some delicious local varieties. There's one called Carse of Gowrie, another called Scotch Bridget. Let me see. There's quite a lot. There's 33 Scottish apples. And again, if you ask, do I have them? Yes, they're in the orchard somewhere. This one here, there's a great big one. This is quite big. This one, I'm not quite sure what this one is. Might be, it's not quite yellow enough for a grenadier, which is a really delicious eating apple. So this tree, this one here has got weighted down, and the size of these, that's quite a nice size for a cooking apple. And some of them, let me see, Tare of Gowrie, that is a delicious cooking apple, and it's huge. It's about the size of my hand, and you can bake with it. You just simply pop it in the oven, and it gives you a really good flavour. So this one, again, the trouble is I can't quite remember all the names all the time. But this one is it's a sort of light apple, and I can tell just by feeling it that it's going to be quite crisp and juicy, and it will have a really nice flavour. Each apple's got a very slightly different flavour, and each apple is really good for different things. We've got some which are great for making apple pies, some which are good for pressing, just for juice. We've got some pears as well. We've got some really old pear trees, and they some of the pears are completely rock hard, and they stay hard and green. And you think, well, what on earth do you do with that? But I think probably what they used it for was in recipes, and they used it like potatoes almost as a starch. Oh, here's quite a large one. I think the size. I'm a very lazy cook, and so I quite like a nice large big apple. So that's a big one. This is actually a cider apple, but might be quite sweet as well. So I would use this. I would just peel this and pop this into a. Oh, I know. Stephanie's going to ask me about my favourite recipe, and I promised I'd send her the recipe, and of course I've forgotten. But the easiest is such a cheat. You just slice up your apples. You put them on a tin with a bit of sugar, and then you just put a piece of ready rolled pastry on top and pop them in the oven, and 20 minutes later you've got a delicious Tarte Tatin if you just flick it out and turn it around. And that's my cheat recipe. But it's delicious. But in the house really like, I've got 4 children, and one of them hates fruit and the other one doesn't like this and that, but what they all like is apple puree. You just cook up the apples with a bit of cinnamon and sugar, and then they love that with ice cream, and that is delicious.
Catherine, we have a question for you.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yes, I lost track of what I was saying. Yes.
I'm sorry, I popped out to get a couple of apples. I've got a question, but the question I had, I missed the recipe for the apple tartan. Did you say?
Yes. So what you do is you get an apple, you get your baking tin. In the baking tin, just put a couple of bits of butter, shake on some sugar, then you peel your apple and slice it up, lay it flat on the tin on top of the butter. Then you put on top your piece of ready rolled pastry.
Is that puff pastry or short crust pastry?
It's whatever you have. It doesn't matter. It's a really easy recipe. And then you pop it in the oven. I think it's probably 20 minutes and then it's done.
Thank you.
It's a really...
I do have another question, but I don't know if this is the right time, but I don't want to interrupt.
Oh, no, right time. Ask away, I think.
My name is Jessica Monroe, by the way, and
hi, Jessica.
I'm the SWI president of Kinross Group, right?
Hello, yes.
And I don't know if you know Anne Kerr, but she's the person who invited me onto this, right?
Yeah.
We have lots of apple trees. We've got a big property, and I didn't plant any of them. They've been there for a long time, and we get lots and lots of apples. Now, is it okay for me to talk to you at this point? I don't want to interrupt your presentation.
My presentation is very vague. I think I'm probably going to keep going. I think is the answer until somebody tells us not to.
We have bramleys and things, but we have lots of apples like this one, loads and loads of them. And it looks like a cooking apple, and obviously it is a cooking apple. But when I use this apple, when I cook with this apple, it just crumbles up. It doesn't maintain any sort of shape or texture. And I don't know what sort of apple that is, but I'll give you time to think about that. And then we've got.
It's not. It looks like a bramley, I've got to say.
It looks like a bramley, yes.
Right. What does it taste of? The thing about apples, so what does it taste of?
Well, it tastes like a cooking apple. You know, I don't know how to.
It tastes like a cooking apple, so it's slightly sour.
Sorry.
It's slightly sour.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and then this one, I'm going to give you time to think about this, Catherine. This one, they are very small, but they are eating apples. I've got no idea what type of apple that is. Now, I'm going to leave that with you to think about it. I'm sorry.
I'll get back to you later.
I will now mute myself.
No, not at all, but that's it. there's so much diversity, and we've lost the knowledge of apples, and there's not that there's as I say, that there's a great question, Jessica. I'm probably not going to be able to answer because I'm not a specialist in identifying apples, and there are two marvellous old boys who are well into their 80s, and they are very knowledgeable on Scottish apples. So they can tell, they just look at an apple and they can tell by the size of the stalk, the weight, the colour, the shape, and where the tree is growing probably as well. They can tell exactly what sort of apple it is. I can only usually tell a few trees, and then everything else has got to have a label on. Otherwise I'm just going to get it wrong. But we've got some great apples. Small red apples for children is one of my big things. I want to get children eating apples and making things out of the fruit, and then hopefully also eventually selling it on this a marvelous, there's an online it's an online market called NeighbourFood, which is what we're talking about, and the NeighbourFood is a way of, hopefully, I'm hoping that I can get children through an umbrella organisation to sell on that, so that they can come out and they can pick their own apples from, say, their tree or their parents' tree or their grandparents' tree, and then their relations could then show them the best recipe and how to make it or bake it, and then they can sell it on the NeighbourFood Market, and then they can actually get money for it. And sorry, Stuart, I've probably completely gone off track here, but it's one of the things I'm really keen about. And having the big orchard it's just simply a place. Orchards are a lovely space, and they're very relaxing, and it's all the biodiversity, the amount of birds, the insects, everything that goes towards making an orchard a lovely place. And children get a lot out of being in an orchard. So it's just, I think it's important to get children out, to get them making, tasting apples and growing, so that the next generation can grow fruit and they know how to grow it, and then they know what to do with it, rather than just having a tree with loads of stuff and they've no idea what to do with it. Right, sorry, I can keep going. Any more questions, Stuart?
No, I was just going to pop in here because it suddenly became relevant that Forth Environment Link has a handbook for teachers and for groups that provides all sorts of know-how and recipes around managing an orchard and creating recipes from the apples as well. So if there's any interest in that, we can share that resource. And of course, you might correct me here, Catherine, but my understanding of an orchard is if you've got 5 fruit trees, you've got an orchard. And so it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be a huge space. It can be a corner of your school or a bit of your park or a bit of your allotment, etc. And you can get involved. And I think what's really interesting you've spoken about there is it's just that awareness and that knowledge, and then you've got the skills, and then you've got potential, income or potential jobs out of it. And I think that's where you started talking about losing knowledge. Really kind of relates to losing jobs ultimately.
Yes, exactly.
To prompt you, Catherine, because I know you've talked to me about how you care for your orchard using wool. Would you be able to share that?
Yes, definitely. So, Steffi, if you could just keep an eye on the time, because I will keep going. So I've been trialling sheep's fleeces as a mulch, and as also as they're great. So I put the sheep's fleece. It's a weed suppressant. And I've put them down under the trees, and I've discovered that you need 2 layers to be really efficient to stop the weeds. But a sheep's fleece, it does all sorts of things. The beneficial things of it keeps the roots warm, keeps them cool in the summer, warm in the winter, and also when it rains, it holds the rain and then will release it slowly into the ground. Also, it's a slow release nitrogen source, and the other great thing is it does suppress the weeds, and it's also great for the sheep farmers. And originally I thought this is going to be a great this will be really helpful for particularly the small farmers who have sheep on the hills whose coats are not quite so you know, there's not so much value in their fleeces. But if there was a market for selling to in the horticultural side in people's gardens, I thought that would, you know, it benefits everybody. But the sheep's fleece is really interesting as a mulch. Next question.
So, Catherine, you spoke about the biodiversity there. Can you give us some examples of things that you can see in perhaps in the orchard that you wouldn't see in other parts of the castle grounds?
Yes, there's a lot of well, actually, you say in the castle, the whole area is quite diverse because we've got we're not organic, but we don't spray, so we're sort of it's a different thing. It's the natural. Say, there's in the orchard, it's really difficult to see, but there's a massive amount of lichens, and we had a survey done a few years ago, and there's 144 lichens, I think, and a couple of rare ones. And why you find the lichens here, so many, it's indicative that the air is clear, and lichens don't move very fast. So if you cut down a whole area, the lichens will die because they only move very slowly from, you know, sort of one bit of wood to the next. So if I just come up to this, I've got a pear tree here, and the a bit of mess. Can't quite see. It's not great, but so there's loads of butterflies. The butterflies love the rotting fruit. So some of these trees, so this pear tree is absolutely huge, and the fruit, it's too tall to pick from. But when the fruit falls, it drops down to the ground and it attracts clouds of butterflies, and then you've got all the insects, other insects, and then you've got lots of birds that feed on it. Oops, I forgot where I was going. So, yes, so that all times, because you've got lots of insects, got lots of birds, and birds are then natural predators. If you've got a problem with you know, a green fly or black fly or something, and they all tend to keep the population under control. So it's quite a good cycle. So it all sort of works holistically. I'm not sure this. Okay, this is a huge. Not quite sure. This is a huge, beautiful pear tree. Really old. This one. This is they're about 250 years old. These ones. Going a bit closer. I'll just point it round, see if we can see. Not really. Anyway, it's a huge tree, and it's covered in different types of lichens. And this one, probably going to drop this, but this one has got a very odd shaped pear. There we are. There's more here. Really pretty. And this one we've taken it's been sent off for the DNA in the national collection, and it's not down in the national collection. So this pear tree is unique to Megginch, and we have called it we've called it Castle of Dreams, the pear tree. That's another one there, because Megginch we think is very special. Chief engineer in the Merchant Navy. When she was a little girl, she would stand in the orchard, and she and her sisters would climb up into the trees, and she said it was like being in ships in full sail, because they're just beautiful. And it's beautiful in an orchard when you've got all the trees in blossom, and it's magical, and children love that. It's like being in another kingdom. So, oh, and this one's also got this one. There's two of them together. Little here. It's got some. It's got little. Oops, sorry. Little ferns which you can see, but then there's lots of other lichens on it, and yeah, it's just special. What else can see? Small pears.
That's fantastic. You've got a unique tree, a unique pear tree to the UK, and it's just so important to preserve these varieties and these heritages, because we're just you know, as we know from the shocking news over recent years, we're just losing species on this planet at an alarming rate, and having places where they can be catalogued and hopefully repopulated at some point in the future is just going to be so important. Catherine, we're coming to the end of our time with you. I want to thank you very much. Very much indeed. But I just wanted to just see if there were any last questions there at all.
I'm sorry, I don't want to sort of we probably do have an orchard, because we've got lots of apple trees and cherry trees and one pear tree, but I've only ever had one pear of that pear tree. Is that? I mean, we have gardens. It
could be lots of different things. It could be the soil. I usually think the first port of call is to look at your soil. And see if the soil is happy, because there's so many microorganisms in the soil, and particularly the mycorrhiza. And if the mycorrhiza are happy, they'll feed your pear tree. So I would. There might be loads of other things, but that's always a good start.
Yeah. Okay.
And
thank you.
Sometimes, if it gets pruned, perhaps it's not a great idea. I don't know. They all need different types of pruning. I'm not an expert on pruning.
Well, I'm actually wondering about the pruning, because this is a private house. It's Hattonburn House in you know, outside of Kinross, and we do have a couple of gardeners who look after everything, but one of them does the pruning, and I'm wondering if Jim maybe is not pruning our pear trees correctly, but I wouldn't know.
Well, each variety likes different things. I would suggest feed it and leave it for a couple of years.
Right.
And see what happens.
Okay. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. Fingers crossed.
Catherine, how can people keep up with what's going on at Megginch? How can they stay in touch with you and see what's happening?
We've got a website, megginchcastle.com. And also I'm on Instagram, or rather not me, but generally Megginch is with, and that is, it's just at Megginch Castle. And there's, it's usually just a variety of stuff that I put up there as what's happening.
Taking a note of that.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that beautiful tour of your orchard there, and introducing us to some very special trees and some very different fruit. I'm still blown away by the Pendragon. I'm still getting over that one. But that's absolutely wonderful. Just leaves me to say thank you very much to Catherine Drummond-Herdman at Megginch Castle. You can, of course, follow her on social media. The Megginch Castle NeighbourFood is open, so do have a browse of that, and hopefully in time some of those fruits will be available to buy through the market as well. And do keep in touch with Forth Environment Link 2. We plan to have more ongoing interactive online events, both at the end of this year and into next year. So do follow our social media for news of those coming up. And our next event under this week's Gather Around Local Food programme will be on Monday lunchtime, and that will be on growing your own food with the fantastic guys at Scrumptious Garden near Loch Tay. So I'm going to say thank you very much indeed, and I'm going to stop the record now. But if anybody does want to hang out with any more informal questions off the record, I'll leave you to do that. Thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you. Right. Thank you.